All right. Hello, everyone. It is Measured Response Episode 2. I hope you all enjoyed the first episode and hopefully are interested in, I'm looking for, I had a good time last time, and so I'm looking forward to having another discussion. So, but I think we'll probably start. We're going to try some new technical things, and we're doing them live because that's how life goes. But I think we'll start with talking a little bit about what we're up to. Safer, do you want to talk about kind of what you've been up to in the last week or so?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Measured Response 2, Episode 2. Kind of crazy that, we've made it this far 2 weeks in a row. Yeah, I'm at a board game conference, like a design conference today, which is... it is wild that we are doing this today. From like a hotel room that is not my hotel room. I'm borrowing a hotel room from someone else for today to do this.
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of me that's like, we could have waited like 2 weeks to start this till I was not sick and you were not had commitments, but we're like, no, let's just do it do it now.
We're testing the tech stuff live. We are live iterating and play testing Measured Response.
Indeed. Okay, let's see. Hold on. We're gonna do it in live play testing. Let's see. This is going. Yep, that should. Okay, we're gonna try this, and then we're gonna get our first pre-recorded question. And that is definitely not going to Safer. Man, I thought I had this figured out. I thought it was gonna be so easy. I could just hit a button.
It's okay. I think that I can listen to it and come back.
Okay, so I'm going to play our first question. This one comes to us courtesy of Cobrabubbles. So the stream will hear this, and then I might have to reiterate it quickly for Safer in case it doesn't work for you.
Hi Ben, Cobrabubbles here. You may remember me from that one MC meeting we were in every week. Calling today from a cold but sunny Norfolk. I work my lift from work, and I have a question about humour. I've been thinking about this on and off over the years, particularly lately in light of conversation. Jay mentioned something he calls moment first design, right, where you're designing cards to try and encourage certain kinds of moments that are memorable and exciting to happen in games of Netrunner. And one kind of such moment is a funny moment, right? Can you design for that? Like, can you do humor first design?
All right. Well, apologies for the super cursed audio there. I've also lost Safer for a second, so I think Safer is coming back. So broadly, the question was, apologies about the delay. I will have to play with some settings probably after the stream rather than trying to do this a bunch during the stream. But the question was kind of, this idea of both moment design and then this idea of like, could you do humor first design in Netrunner? And then there was also a question that I think got cut of funny moments that we've had. So, Safer, I'm as the professional designer in the room, this seems like a great one for you to start with.
Yes. So I think when Jake was talking about like moment first design, it's all about kind of having these standout, memorable, almost like I want to say like sound bits, but it's this idea that you have something that sticks with you that you can then tell a story about to other players. And it's actually a concept that's kind of become more and more popular within like the game design space over the last like decade or so. I think Eric Lang is really like the origin of kind of this like moment first design kind of concepts. And it's all because like there's so much stuff that's going on these days, and you want memorable experiences, and that's kind of like one of the things that players are looking for. And within Netrunner, it's something that I think we always I think every single one of us probably has a moment where, like a game in Netrunner, where it's come down to the wire, and the game has been going on for like 50 minutes, but it feels like 80, and there's 2 cards left in R&D, and the runner's sitting there thinking about it, and they make the run on R&D. The corp knows that like this is it. They flip over the top card. It's an agenda, and everyone goes crazy.
Yeah.
I think. Oh God. Andre was talking about this moment from Worlds that really stuck with him, and like his story then stuck with me about hitting bite, the bite being trashed, and then Basalt picking back up the bite and then having to shuffle and then having the same bite. And like that is kind of the moments that like designers are like looking for when they're talking about like moment first design. So can you make humor first design or something incredibly humorous? And I think that the answer is honestly no, because that almost makes an assumption that like the designers intended for something to be humorous, and humor is so context driven, both in terms of like circumstance but also people, that I think that humor in games is probably one of the hardest things to do, but usually great.
I think you can do humor first design. An example, like it's like a whole genre of games. The like example that comes to mind for me is like Fun Employed, which is like it basically is an improv game, right? I think it's like there is that version of the board game space that's like we just took an improv like Monikers is probably another example of like a game that is designed to just become funny after a certain amount of time, and like you can there's. This is, if you have not played Fun Employed, this is like a super, like this is an old game. It's not super popular. It just happens to be one that I picked up at one point. The premise is like, oh, you give someone a hand of 5 random attributes from a big deck of cards, and then you flip over a job, and everyone has a different hand, and they all have to explain why they're the best candidate for the job, with one person being the judge. And like there is game design in there where the attributes you have are like, they're not job attributes. They're things like, I have a harpoon, or I get wet easily, or like there's just like weird things. And like if I had to guess, I haven't looked at the deck in quite a long time. There's a lot of like little double entendres and like slightly suggestive things in the cards just to encourage it to go to a silly space rather than a try hard serious space. So there is like that element of, yes, you can design humor. Can you design humor in Netrunner? I think is a little bit of a different question, because it's a different space and a different type of play that you're doing.
You're totally right. So I was definitely thinking of it from like can you do like a humor first design within Netrunner? And that's where I was like, I don't know. No, I think it's hard. But you're totally right that it does happen within board game space, and specifically like the party game space or TTRPGs.
Yeah.
I think about this like the Exploding Kittens person. I think it's Elon. I think is his name. I don't remember his last name. But he was talking about kind of what makes Cards Against Humanity special, and it's not the game mechanics, because that already existed. It was apples to apples. It's the writing within Cards Against Humanity, right? It's not just that, the players are there making each other kind of like funny and having good moments. It's that the writing in the game is facilitating those players to be funnier than they normally are. And that's what makes Cards Against Humanity special.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to think of, it's like the closest to me of like things that like there are cards that are designed to produce big moments. Like, Deep Dive, I think unfortunately is like a little too consistent to like create the hype in some ways, right?
Yes.
Like it's it's actually a little bit too good, but the intent of Deep Dive is very much like a, oh my goodness, he pulled off the big play, and now we get to like flip over cards and see if something big happens. And like, I think it's like Netrunner has a lot of those moments when the game is balanced well of like, the runner Hail Mary trying to get the top agenda off of R&D is such an, it's almost one of like the defining Netrunner moments, I think, in many ways. But I think it is very hard to do consistent humor within Netrunner as opposed to emergent humor, depending on, like, you're not going to find that many funny moments at Worlds, no matter how hard you try during the main event. Like, you can't, as a designer, trying to shoehorn a funny moment into that environment, it just kind of feels like it's not quite the right idea.
Yeah, I think that the stakes outside of the game take away kind of the playfulness that's required for humor to naturally emerge within gameplay. And I think that the funniest moments in Netrunner is, you access the same RLC in hand like 5 times in a row, and someone makes a quip or a joke like that. And I think the core of it is that variance, the natural variance that's within the game, kind of coming out and finding, like, having a set of expectations, and then the variance going to a different set of expectations, and then players kind of like building a common ground on that. So I think that's all my thoughts on humor. I did want to, like, yes, and your deep dive point about how deep dive fails at is that it's so consistent that it breaks tension. You know that it's going to work because it's so consistent. And to have like the big moments and moment first kind of like design in Netrunner, you actually need to have things be less consistent than deep dive, because you need things to build up and not be you need the natural variance in the game to basically like play into things.
Yeah, it's like, I almost think like this is not not a good card and doesn't hit this vibe, but it sort of attempts to in a way that I think is admirable, of like Climactic Showdown, where it's meant to be like this moment of building tension that you like explode, but like in practice it actually has outlets that are not super interesting, and then also the payoff isn't actually that exciting when you do get it out. So like maybe it's not really the right. I guess it's, to me, maybe a closer one would be like Super Deep Borehole, like popping off feels like an example of like
a super
like,
deep borehole win is a big moment.
Yeah,
like a big.
Yeah, it's interesting. Oh, sorry.
Wait. What does this card do?
Yeah, Climatic Showdown. It sort of doesn't do anything with a lot. It's like the most words for the least effect of just about any card. But yeah, I'm trying to think of other big. I do feel what was I think an unintentionally. I don't know if this is unintentionally funny. I guess I always get a little kick out of, as like a corporate. To me, this is always a funny moment. This did happen the other day where like the runner like trashes an asset off the top of R&D, and then I res that same asset in the root of another server that they didn't check that turn. Like, that's not a funny moment, but it is a little, like, it gets a little chuckle out of me each time that happens. So
it feels almost like a Charlie Chaplin moment,
Yeah.
That's what it kind of feels like.
Yeah, and then conversely, like the runner turn where you go and trash the live asset on the board, then check the top of R&D, and it's that same asset again, and you just kind of have to like have that little little chuckle for yourself. So
I do think the funniest, I think I experienced this on Monday at our locals, where the runner ran like R&D. They like spent like a solid 30 seconds thinking if they should trash the asset. Like I flip it over. I go, oh, that's a wage workers, and then I just flip over wage workers, start of turn.
Yeah.
I think you nailed it.
Cool. So yeah, you're gonna hop into your little hidey hole. I'm gonna play the next sound, the next take. Though yeah, so this is from NotYeti.
Hello, this is NotYeti, a member of EA Sports and serial deck
Oh,
builder.
that is inaudibly
My
quiet.
question, hot take, is basically that competitive Netrunner players value skill expression too much when picking.
Hi Jeff, hi Ben, Cobrabubbles here.
Hello,
Apologies,
this
everyone.
is NotYeti, a member of EA Sports and serial deck builder. My question, hot take, is basically that competitive Netrunner players value skill expression too much when picking their deck. Top level competitive players are more attracted to decks that allow them to express or leverage their skill advantage in a way that makes them feel good whilst playing the game.
All right. So after some audio issues, got that one playing. Hopefully, people could hear that reasonably well. So I will say this is a take I edited down, so maybe we'll talk about some of the nuance that got cut later. But I guess, Safer, because I'm going to start throwing to you pretty much the top of each of these questions because I'm interested in hearing your thoughts.
All right. This was so I did listen to the full one of this when it first came in, and I just have to tell Yeti, this was a real you had me in the first half kind of take. I think I agree with the general overview and premise, but maybe disagree with like the final assertion. Where I do think that as Netrunner players and community members, we have, we are proud of our game, and we are proud of how intricate it is and how deep it is. And I think sometimes that means that we want to get as cute as possible with our decks and our lists and our strategies. And I do think that sometimes, if our goal is to just straight up win as many games as possible, then you're maybe not picking the most optimal way of getting as many wins. Where I kind of disagree is that you can have an incredibly skill expressive deck and feel good about that and be rewarded by that, and that actually probably does increase your odds of winning, because I think that when you look at people at the top of any sport or competition or whatever, I think that you're more likely to see someone who is having fun and enjoying themselves, because all of the people that are just grinding have probably burned themselves out. So they might peak at a certain point, but they don't stay at the top.
I think that's an interesting. I think it's it's one of those things where it's like I agree with the general premise of this take, and we'll talk about the full clip, I guess, in a minute, because I basically disagree pretty strongly with the examples used in it. But I also think that's a pretty good point of feeling yourself and feeling your deck, especially when you're playing a long event, is like an underrated advantage. Of just it's being like, I am very comfortable with the play patterns of this and understanding how to do X, Y, and Z in the relevant matchups, is probably worth quite a bit to a player, even if it's not the strictly optimal. If you took two perfect Netrunner players, there's going to be cases where playing the deck that has fewer options but does those things more powerfully is better. I think maybe an example that's kind of eternal relevant or was eternal relevant was the combo woo deck that basically you don't need to actually know what it does. It just consistently comboed out on turn 4 or 5 and would just take 3 turns. It would basically have an unstoppable an unstoppable triple server run into triple encore into APOC into like seeing every card in R&D. Like it just wasn't an interactive deck. And like it wasn't a complicated deck. There were more complex, more skill testing decks playing Eternal, but the power level was so high that you just won, and so you shouldn't play anything else. And so like clearly on the premises, like, but at the same time, not everyone in the Eternal Super League was playing that deck. I don't think just because of tech or things, like there were people that just liked their other play styles more, and I think that's certainly true at even at high level Netrunner at Worlds. I'm trying very hard not to call out Ian, but I'm going to call out Ian here. Like the man's going to play Red Crim regardless of the meta. Like he brought in San Francisco Worlds in 2025 when it was like Lat was so clearly the best deck. Ian was like, I just can't play this deck. I hate playing this deck. I'm gonna play a deck, and like he knew he was taking an EV loss there, expected value. Like it was worse than the best deck. It was more complicated than the best deck. But it was more in his skill set, and like I think that was actually the right call for him, even though he ended up doing great at that Worlds. But I think it's short of cases of egregious power level. I actually think it's pretty hard for a bunch of reasons in Netrunner to make this case super compelling that players are consistently making super suboptimal choices by going for higher skill preferences over raw power.
Yeah. I also think like, okay, you mentioned the Eternal Super League, and I'm like, one of the things that comes up for me is like, why do people play? Like, why are people playing? And I think that from a very almost like an outside perspective that I'm gonna make up like a straw man person, like an argument that you could imagine someone having is the reason why people play Eternal is because they want the most powerful things all of the time, and that's what it's about. And I think that what I've consistently heard from people who do regularly engage in Eternal is that that's not frequently the reason why they play Eternal. It's because they have specific cards that they're interested in playing, or they really like the deck building, or they really like the diversity of strategies, or they like that it has an increased power level, but it's not truly about, quote unquote, the strongest Netrunner decks you could ever play.
Mm-hmm.
And so why are people playing in the Eternal Super League? It's probably not just to do some sort of kind of straightforward known combo execution and just win. And so like, why do people play in the Netrunner World Championships? Certainly a lot of them are in fact gunning to be the world champion, but I think that there's going to be some percentage of people that, you know, maybe they're 20%, I would like to be world champion, but, you know, 80%, I just want to go and play Netrunner and have fun, and I want to do it my way. There might be, you know, a person who's 90% I'm gunning for worlds, for being a world champion and do the single best that I can. But 10% of me says, you know, I have to have other things outside of life that I need to take care of and other stuff going on, where I'm going to be realistic with myself and what time I have available. So I'm not going to stress too much about like bringing the most optimal deck, and I'll focus on making sure that I play super well in person. Yeah, like I think the point that I'm really trying to hit at here with this is that like there are so many factors that go into winning a game, specifically at an incredibly long event, that like you should, if your goal is to be world champion, specifically in Netrunner, then you should be thinking about all of these other factors, including like how much sleep did you get the night before. You should fly in to wherever it is earlier so you're adjusted for time. You should pick a deck where you're less likely to make mistakes and then also play it well. But we should also all acknowledge that like we're doing this probably because we want to engage in the community or we want to have fun. Like, it's not just about winning.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, every year at Worlds, there's someone who like top 16s or top 32s or whatever who's like, this is my very cool deck. I just want to play this deck to be very cool. And like, you know, at the end of the day, Netrunner also has a lot of variance to it. And so it's like,
Yes.
it's the like, oh, do you want to favor the skill expression deck or take the less skill expression deck that has a 5% increase in win rate? Can you actually feel a 5% increase in win rate over the course of 10 games? That's actually going to be difficult, right? Over 20 games, that's maybe one more game that you're expected to win. And that's assuming that you play both decks equally well and stuff. And I think Eric Hayden also in the chat mentioned, like, when you play a deck that's skill expressive and you're highly skilled, you are often able to like exploit players because they may not be familiar with some of the lines that you're familiar with, especially if that deck is not the most meta deck at the time. So there's so many contingent advantages. I will also say briefly, NotYeti's two examples of this were the combo Asmari deck and Moosely Hot last year, and the Moosely Hot example is entirely unconvincing to me. But like, okay, and the combo Asmari, I have to go back and play that matchup more. My sense was that deck wasn't even that good into the best runner decks at the time. Like, it was fine. It was probably in the 50, somewhere between 45 and 55%. But like, you could get that with playing a lot of different things. So it's not clear to me that it was that much better, as much as it was really good against scamming wins against people who didn't know what it was doing. And so like, it's very hard for me to buy either of those as being clear cases of people were not favoring the best deck in the format for a higher skill expression one. But should we go on to our any other thoughts?
I have one other thought here. I'm going to try to keep this brief. The EA Asmari example just brain clicked one for me for more recent standard. With the Nebula, false lead Nebula end of the line, when touch-ups was still around, and how Sokka brought that to in-person American Cons last year, because he was like, I think this deck is kind of busted, and it is incredibly straightforward, and it is a simple thing to play, but it has such a high win rate. And then I remember him playing a game in the cut that was on stream, and based off of his draw, he basically lost to the deck. Like,
yeah,
it didn't really feel like he could have played that any better. And I'm just like thinking about how, okay, you could argue that a deck that is simpler to play and where you make less potential play mistakes or whatever would win you more games. But if it also loses you a game in the cut that you couldn't outplay and it was just at the mercy, then you're probably not actually going as far in a tournament as you could on a more skill expressive deck if you are that good. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like that. That is true if and only if your more skill expressive deck has a lower percentage of that like brick I'm unable to outplay. And like, I guess kind of by definition, if we're saying you have a more skill expressive deck available to you, like that just kind of means that definitionally. There is like some optimization trade-off you can do there. I think it's been very difficult to convince me in any recent Netrunner meta history that trade-off hasn't been worth it for like the top, and I'm talking like really like a number of players that you could write down in a list in 5 minutes number of players. Like, I'm not talking about myself. I am not that good. I have not I was good for a while. I have not been in quite a while. It really to me is like probably the top 20 to 30 people of Netrunner players in the world right now should be probably favoring the skill expressive deck over the highest win rate deck, or the strongest simplest deck out there. But like, to me, that when that calculus actually isn't true, that's almost always a sign that a card should be banned. And I actually think that the fact that this Mari never got banned is not oh, the SBT messed up. It's that, like, no, they took an accurate assessment that that deck was something of a glass cannon and not the deck that, like, the best players in the world were going to win on. But that's me really going for EA Sports with a vengeance there, so...
Then your response starts beef with EA Sports.
I mean, it does feel a little bit like you ask for a take where you say I'm wrong, and then they're expecting me to not say no, you're wrong. Like, I don't know, but the next take, I don't know. So this next one is from Eric.
Hey, Jeff and Safer, longtime listener, first time caller. It's Eric here from the Unstatic. I would love to know what you all think an Arissana deck that uses some of the new VP cards would look like. What are your influence spends that you're excited about, and how would you use Stowaway? I really want to make Stowaway work. Thanks. Looking forward to the new show.
Hey, Jeff. Hey, Safer. Veronica here.
Sorry, next one started auto-playing. I gotta fix that for the next time. So yeah, actually, let me see... I don't know that we're going to, especially because you're in a hotel room and can't do this easily, but I figured we should probably I'll just pull up Netrunner DB.
You're going to open the team builder?
And let me do that quickly so that we can start thinking about that.
I mean, I can pull up NRDB. That's not hard.
Yeah.
But I do think this is like a question that you should start with for sure.
Yeah. So, I guess from my perspective, so like, let's just, I'm going to be honest here. I haven't had a chance to fill an Ari deck yet, which sounds, boy, that's sure a sentence I said. Actually, here, let's do none, and let's just look at the Vantage Point cards.
Well, you haven't had a chance to play much at all because you've been sick.
Yes.
Like, you have a good...
I do have a good excuse of being so sick that I just basically slept for a week. And Eric was like, oh, I want to be able to use Stowaway. And I'm like, well, I have good news for you. Stowaway is basically the best card you could want for Ari. Like, it is... Cubon was probably the best Trojan. There were situations where it was the second best Trojan in your deck. But I think this card is significantly stronger than Cubon because you don't have to do the timing dance. You can run in the piece of ice. If the corp chooses not to res, which they often won't, you just get 2 credits. I have built a Baz deck also, to be fair, because I've got my priorities right.
Urban Art Vernissage, I think, is the card from the Automata Initiative that I know that when I was getting back into the game and I was asking you about Ari a lot because I knew you enjoyed Ari a lot, you highlighted this kind of urban art vernissage engine to me. Do you want to speak a little bit towards like how that works and why it's different than Reg Economy?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to me, it's just like, it's, to some extent, I'm like, oh, it's an intuitive engine of, okay, I get to basically, if I have a Trojan, especially a 0-cost Trojan, and an Urban Art Vernissage, my click for a run now kind of becomes 2 credits as well, which is a very, very powerful effect. Now, they're not 2 credits you can use for anything. That is unfortunate. But, like, it takes the deck, and like a lot of Shaper decks are gated by getting engine pieces down and getting install and like that's gated to some extent by clicks and install costs. And UAV basically says by running, you get to solve one of the problems that Shaper has of install costs. And you're also solving the problem of making economy while interacting with the board, which is just something that Shaper doesn't do. And like, I think it's just like, it's very strong. I don't know. I feel like there's something you were fishing for, Safer, and I feel like I've probably missed it because my.
Oh, don't worry about it. You're pretty close to it. I think when you gave me some pretty cool insights a while ago, where urban art vernissage and a zero cost Trojan in particular gives RE certainly enough of an economy engine once it's up and going that it is better than a share gamble, let's say. Just like regular economy that you could put in your deck. So for like an event and a cam lack kind of list that does just produce a lot of value, well, RE with a stowaway and an urban art vernissage and doing these kind of specific timing runs and pressure runs, if you're able to get the stowaway credits and then pick up that stowaway, you are making 2 real credits, and then you're putting 2 credits on urban vernissage, also while running.
Yeah.
And so you need to, maybe that is what you install, like a coalescence, and you have a lily pad, and you have environmental testing out, and all of a sudden all of these different pieces that come together are much better than playing a sure gamble from your hand. And that's one of the kind of core tenets of like Shaper and Shaper lists, and Ari is just doing that in a unique way. And that kind of engine just wasn't present before when the Trojans that you had cost 1 or 2 to install, because then that's eating into the urban art credits.
Yeah, and often if you're not making those 2, like part of that, thank you for pointing out, it's like part of that is that the Stowaway and Cubon are producing credits in that exchange as well, and so you're actually making that full sure gamble's worth of value, whereas like if you put down a Slap Vandal on ice, you're actually eating up some of that value, and like it's still good, right? Breaking an ice for a credit, for a credit to install and a credit to break is generally going to be a pretty good rate, but it's like that's not pushing you forward, that's keeping you from falling. It's like saying, oh, you'll fall slower than you would otherwise, but that's not quite enough compared to, oh, my UAV and my Stowaway are actually giving me the forward momentum to go and do the rest of my game plan. And yeah, it is this like engine. So I will say, like, the other reason I haven't built Ari is like it's, well, yeah, actually no, that's the reason I haven't built Ari is because I've been having a lot of fun with Baz, frankly. But Lucille says I don't know about Stowaway being better than Cubon because you can't spree surf it. This is maybe a way I think about the game differently. Spree, even in the best Arissana deck that ran Spree, which also I'm pretty sure you can just play that deck again, right? Like that deck is just legal again.
Yeah, I do think so. I think it was playing Trick Shot, right?
Oh, it was playing Trick Shot. You're right. And you don't probably want to play Air Check to replace Trick Shot.
Air Check is not Trick Shot. We could just say that.
But
similar DNA, very different.
Yeah.
Very different.
So I guess, it's without Trick Shot, that deck is going to have some challenges. But also Ika loss is a big deal. Actually, I don't know that it's that big of a loss for that deck. Like genuinely, that deck isn't a UAV deck. That deck is a combo deep dive deck. And like I actually think that's probably still fine and wasn't that dependent on Stowaway, though probably the fact that it hasn't been good suggests that it has other more complex issues than is worth getting into here. Eric will say, I tried UAV Stowaway and the particular load I had felt underwhelming. I'm curious about play patterns and slots, but that might be too much detail for that show. I don't know that I'm going to build like the whole version of the Ari deck I would start with. I will say a play pattern that I suspect is correct is actually just spending your first mute, like you should be aggressively face checking without solutions in your hand or like a muse in hand. Like you can, well, no, you should probably face check with the muse in hand, but just let things go. Like just actually prioritize getting a stowaway on the board if you have a UAV out. Like make a run on R&D with, or like if R&D is iced, HQ is uniced, it is totally reasonable. Well, you should probably still run R&D first in most cases. But if you're not going to, for whatever reason, like it's Jinteki and you're worried about something, run HQ, Muse, put the stowaway on the R&D ice, and like tank it. Like, and if the corp wants to trash their own ice to deny you stowaway value, you're probably still coming out pretty reasonably in that exchange. Like, don't go to 0 credits doing that play, but like that should be, I guess, common sense Netrunner advice. I think it's like, to me, the goal of RE decks, you're not sitting back building your engine. You are just trying to apply pressure and using that pressure to like like synergistically build your engine as you find pieces. So like to me, I would probably start with, you know, what I've got up on screen is 3 lily pad, 3 environmental testings, 3 UAV, 3 coals, 3 muses, 3 stowaways. Like to me, that's like the starting point. I would say you're gonna want a Ficerum, you're gonna want a Hush, you're gonna want creative commissions, you're gonna want some additional draw in here. I would say this deck probably does prefer Ritual over Nuka. Not to say you shouldn't run Nuka, but like it's a deck that wants burst draw, and then it will just lily pad draw engine wise as it kind of continues. In terms of like other stuff from this set, like this set, it wasn't like, I'm not gonna say it wasn't good for Ari, because Stowaway I actually think is so important for the deck. I definitely want to try a read write share. I've had some reports to me that telling me it's not great for Arissana, which I could believe, but I would definitely want to check it out myself as well. And like SEPA is not relevant for you, Touchstone's not relevant for you, Air Check, Beta Build, Methuselah, like they're all not particularly relevant for you. And I don't think there's other, I do think like was it Touchstone? No, it's Taylor. Tungsten Taylor is worth a consideration, because often an end game for your Arson, like, oh yeah, Take a Dive is actually a good shout. I actually think Compromat is also a reasonable shout too. I suspect that Take a Dive is more consistent, but I think they're both things to consider. A thing I would be thinking about is like, okay, part of Ari's strength is like you have this like very interactive, criminal-esque early game that you get to kind of leverage into an engine, and so then you want to make sure that your end game like lands. And so to me, I'm like, okay, my first build I might do 1 Tungsten Tailor, 1 Buzzsaw, and then Echelon, and like see if like, you know, this is 34 cards. Well, let's put in rituals. We'll probably put in some sure gambles. We probably will put in Dr. Nukas as well, or maybe Stone Chip Chart Rooms, you know, dealer's choice on those. And it's like, this is a 43 card deck. It actually looks pretty reasonable to me. The Read Right Chair is probably questionable. You probably want some more program tricks in here, probably an extra Trojan or 2. Maybe you want SMC. I guess the thing that I've seen, I'm trying to think what's the like, what are my rules of thumb for like making the UAV engine work? And it's like, you know, you should probably, until you have an engine set up, you probably want to be drawing twice a turn, running once a turn, and then doing some setup for your last click. And like that might be my like rule of thumb of try that allocation of resources for the early game, and then go from there. Oh yeah, probably this deck wants a deep dive, and then you want to spend 7 influence in 1 card somehow. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll shout Wheels as a card that is both a way of getting a click or deep dive, and a way of kind of helping you check assets, and also gives you a free like running click to use your RE ability. So Wheels, I think, is pretty well positioned at the moment.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Of
Clean
course,
Getaway
we-
is a card I should shout out as like it's not like the
Yeah.
best use of influence always, but like it actually goes pretty nicely in RE decks because sometimes you're like, well, I want to get a Trojan down. Running is the best way to do it. Oh, Clean Getaway compresses, so I get my money, I get my Trojan, and I kind of can keep going. I would say like this is not a deck I'm leaping to do Knick-Knack in, but like it's definitely something to consider. But yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And Cupulation's always.
Oh yeah, Cupulation's always a good shout too. Yeah. All right, fantastic. Well, we've got one more pre-recorded question, so let's get to that.
Hey Jeff, hey Safer, Veronica here. I'm really excited for this new podcast. I hope it will help demystify the process involved in making.
Oh, and that is inaudibly quiet again. Apologies. Let's adjust some audio settings and try one more time.
Hey Jeff, hey Safer, Veronica here. I'm really excited for this new podcast. I hope it will help demystify the process involved in making Netrunner. My question is about something that isn't in Vantage Point, but that some people did expect. With the release of Elevation and the departure of Freedom Kamala, there is no virus Anarch ID. Is this something that was considered for Vantage Point? What are your thoughts on these identities that are designed to interact with a specific resource, like Asa with core damage and Seb with dex? Thank you.
All right. Safer, were you able to hear the question, or would you like me to repeat it?
Oh no, I got it.
Okay, cool. I mean, I guess I will very quickly say, as someone who loves to wax poetical about Ari, who is the one who interacts with resources in a way that like no one else does in the faction, I think those IDs have a pretty important place in Netrunner, at least thematically and like as a attraction of a play style. I think the best Netrunner design, the best versions of those IDs are like still support playing with the whole card pool, and the very best versions have very few cards that are completely isolated, but that's a very challenging task. And that's sort of my like very quick, like I love me some, as people always love to call it when they dislike it, parasitic design of, you know, cards that use a resource that other cards of that group haven't used yet. And I think there's, but, you know, I should let the designer talk.
You know, I don't know the etymology of parasitic design, like why it was necessarily called parasitic, but like, part of me has always gone, it's called that, it must be called that because viruses were the original like parasitic kind of deck, and you have Parasite. I don't know.
I mean,
it
comes so it actually comes from MTG, I believe.
Oh, really?
I believe it's an MTG loan word. I don't know if it started with slivers or something else, but like that's the context I have heard of it first.
Interesting. Usually I know, I don't play Magic much anymore. Okay, I don't play Magic at all anymore. But
yeah.
Usually design concepts for Magic, like I know fairly well, but it could totally have been a thing that's come up or a part of conversation, but that I wasn't aware of. Anyways, virus identities in Netrunner. I think that I would say that Anarch virus identities are probably like some of the most iconic specific resource pairings to like a factions dynamic that I think we have on like the runner side, certainly.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because
honestly,
like there's only 2 of them, but it like feels so definitional to Anarch that like Anarch interacts with viruses, and it's I don't know if that's like, is that a excuse me, is that like a noise, like, you know, everyone just learned that lesson from Noise, and Noise somehow managed to outlast like being one of the first IDs ever rotated, and like Freedom was so iconic. Like it's an interesting thing to me of like it's a small space of the overall Anarch ID pool, but it's like it is in many ways like the definition. It's one of the definitional like alternate resource things.
Yeah, there's something about the ethos of it that I think has always spoken to the player base, you know? And so I guess going back to the Veronica's actual question here, like I don't think that we ever considered it specifically for Vantage Point because it doesn't make sense within the context of Vantage Point. You know, um, we didn't have the space, especially on runner side, to print an identity and then have support for that identity in it. And I think that you could argue that
That Hiram is
you know,
trying to do exactly that.
well, so but the thing is that Hiram just triggers off of all hardware, and it's not that difficult to print future Hiram support if necessary. Like it needs to be a little bit more generic, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like viruses are pretty specific, but the other thing is like viruses have kind of been doing fine even without an identity.
Yeah, I think something. I think at one point, like I've tried to do some like a fan set, and like viruses have this weird pattern where you don't, as you accumulate more and more of them, they get slightly worse, and so your virus identity
Yeah.
needs to offset that in some way. And it's like Noise did that by just saying, "Oh, but we're just going to tack on even more value to viruses, right?" And then Freedom said, "Oh, I'm not really a virus ID. I'm a singular virus program that does something like that's just going to accumulate counters. And then the rest of my deck is going to kind of function without. Like, the deck is not like, oh, I'm going to pack a million viruses in. I'm going to put in the viruses that have the highest impact that I can use for their counters."
And notably reducing the amount of counters on the board that the purge that are susceptible to purging, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
it
so
removes the virus counters in a different way and makes it so that if you are building up a bunch of counters that you're making yourself less susceptible to purging.
Yeah, because you have this outlet to spend. Yeah.
Right.
I guess it's also,
So-
it's like, the other thing is like, to some extent, like, oh, if stealth was going to be part of VP, it's hard to do stealth and viruses in like, it's like, I was shocked when I went and looked. It's like 6 or 8 cards, somewhere in that range for each runner faction. So it's like you have
8 cards. It's 8 cards per runner. So if you print an ID, then it's 7. It's 7 non-ID cards.
Yeah. Which is just, and it's like, oh, if you want to include some mechanics that can go across factions, like you kind of have to just pick one. And so it's like, if it was not part of the original pitch for Vantage Point, like I think it was just going to be something that was difficult to fit in some senses.
I mean, the other thing is that for runners, we are trying to give diversity of strategies, not necessarily make existing strategies better. And like one of the best existing strategies for Anarch right now is based around Audrey and Botulus and Fermenter and Leech and like Cookbook and like
and
these are all
yeah
core critical cards that are quite strong already, and printing more support for them in Vantage Point didn't really make much sense with like the concerns around like side balance.
Yeah, I guess I'm also thinking like one of the most dominant runner decks of the last like 3 years was a virus deck but you just played it out of Ho Lu. Like it was the Nobkari imp decks. It was just like, you just need a good synergy piece. Like you didn't play those decks out of, because Freedom would have been legal if Nobkari was legal. But it's like, no, Freedom was wrong. You wanted the other elements of value. The viruses were good enough on their own. And like Botulus is just a good enough card on its own. Leech is maybe not quite a good enough card on its own, but that's all right. Audrey has a bunch of synergies with just the Anarch card pool right now, so that like it doesn't need an ID to support it. And so putting an ID to support it, like it's like, oh, if you want to print a virus ID that doesn't make runners that much more powerful, well, then it has to not work with the best viruses, which means you need to now print new viruses. It is a real headache of problems for a set that like didn't have to take on that problem, I guess.
Yeah. So Vantage Point, not the right place for it. Doesn't mean that, you're never like, doesn't mean that NSG's never going to print a, virus identity for Anarch, but Vantage Point was definitely not the right time for it.
I guess there was a second part of that question, which was like, how do you feel about the like alternate resource IDs of Seb and Essa, and like what place you feel like they have in the game?
Yeah, I actually have a really hard time conceptualizing Seb and Essa in the same category of alternative resources as the virus ones. Like, I think that viruses. Okay, so virus counters are just mechanically, they're just like any other kind of counter in the game, except that the purging action gives them, it makes them different, right? The purging, the fact that Corge can remove these counters from cards, and that there's this gigantic historical precedent around what viruses typically do, that makes them their own unique thing. But mechanically, you're just adding counters to cards. And then those cards do things with the counters. And that's not particularly abnormal, but it feels different, right? It feels very different. Tags, you can kind of say they have the same framework where, okay, a tag is only relevant by what other tag cards are in the game and what tag punishment is in the game. But Seb is leveraging that resource very differently. It's not even really a resource. It's not like tags are a resource. It's that Seb gets to benefit from something that is usually a detriment. And that's kind of the conceit of Seb's design and playstyle. And then Asa is saying, hey, here's this downside that I've inflicted upon myself, and I'm going to I'm under pressure, and I'm going to apply the same pressure to you, Corp. Like, we're both going to be under pressure. And so in the abstract, you can say like, oh, these are all different resources for the runner, but I think ultimately they are all looking at the different mechanics built into Netrunner that are sometimes a downside for the runner, or have specific dynamics with the corp, and they're all taking their own. This thought is not fully formed yet, which is why this is coming out weird.
Yeah, no, I mean, so maybe this is the way you've been describing it. Like a way maybe to think about this for me is like core damage and tags are both like, they are effects that have a lot of inherent downside for the runner in some fashion, right? Tags have a downside because a lot of powerful corp effects hook on that requirement of having a tag. And so Seb needs to, while gets a powerful effect from the tag, it is in fact just an offset of the cost of removing that tag. Like, it's the ID text basically just says you'll save the clicks clearing the tag to do this other thing. And then the card pool enables him to do better than just that, right? And Essa says, yeah, you're going to hurt your max hand size, and but that's going to allow you to accelerate the game. So you're taking this like negative effect trade-off. Viruses are different in that they are cards that just produce value on their own, but have a weakness that is available to them. But they're not. It's not like like Fermenter is not intrinsically weak by just putting it into play. It has a weakness in that it has an ability for the corp to interact with it in a way that, like, say, Coalescence doesn't. But that's not quite the same. It's like it's a different category of mechanic to some extent, or like type of interaction. It feels like a little bit.
Yeah, I also think that viruses can actually be, because they're counters that you're in full control of, they can be like literally used and evaluated as a resource for the runner, whereas both the Seb and ESSA ones are triggers that give you a benefit for what is normally a downside. And so it's not actually like a resource. Like you don't benefit from having core damage like accumulated. It's that when you take core damage, you get a benefit, and so you're incentivized to do that thing that's normally bad for you. And then the archetypes are built out of those dynamics.
Yeah, okay. That makes actually, I think that's a nice distinction. I think we're going to wrap it up here. It is 8:30. Andre's going to be starting soon. I'm going to hit us with 2 rapid text questions that I did not tell Safer we were preparing for. Actually, maybe we'll do 3. 1, is petty cash cool?
Oh, God. God, no. No. Yeah, cool is in the eye of the beholder. I don't know if I think petty cash is cool, but I think what you can do with petty cash is cool. I think deck building with petty cash is cool.
Oh, I would just say it's not cool to me. To me it's a boring, slightly overtuned card, but you need it because corpse kind of sucks permanently, it seems. Though we'll see. Maybe we'll blow corpse open as we get to the first couple weeks of competitive stuff. Cultivate, trash or busto?
If I have to name one, I think I'm going to put it closer to the busto category than the trash category, but I don't think it is either of these things.
Okay. And then those were both from Analyze Chris. And then last up, Calypso. I know it's still too early to tell, but which cards from Vantage Point seem to keep making their way into Corp and Runner decks respectively?
Keep making their way in. Man.
I'm going to start with an easy one, which is like Let Them Dream. I thought was not going to go in that many scoring decks because you were giving up too much equity by not firing a more powerful agenda effect. And nope, I was just very wrong. It just goes everywhere. At least right now, it seems.
Yeah, I've been definitely putting it into slightly more decks than I was thinking that I was going to, in agenda suites that are different than I thought. Like, it is not necessarily how I predicted or foresaw exact like agenda suites going. Like, there are more cases of me putting 1, 2, or 3 copies in. It's been a little bit more dynamic than I thought it would be. Train is appearing just as much as I thought it is, which is everywhere. Sleipnir is appearing in as many places as I thought it is, and is probably undersplashed currently.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely was weird. I got jump scared by a Sleipnir out of like a Glacier Jinteki, and I was like, oh yeah, this is like, yes, you can run Knowledge Seeker, but you should probably still run Sleipnir even if you're gonna run Knowledge Seeker.
Yeah, I think it's how much are you scared of Leech, Buzzsaw, Doomrigs?
Yeah,
is the differentiator.
Yeah,
there.
like Tungsten Tailor, Buzzsaw. How much is that a thing you're scared of versus?
Yeah. I've seen more Dilo Agent than I was expecting. Flood the Market is a card I keep coming back to for sure.
Yeah. VP has been showing up more than I was expect. Like, a lot of people have been crowning him as the new criminal, which is like wild to me. That's basically you get to play DreamNet for full value is enough to make people go, yeah, this is the criminal now.
I mean, Desperado is one hell of a card.
It's true. And getting to play both Hermes and Desperado plus a card draw is a pretty powerful ability. So
Yeah. It's not quite Desperado, but like
No, it's probably closer to Paragon, but like Paragon saw a lot of play.
I miss Desperado.
Yeah, I think.
Event Horizon.
Yeah,
Effects.
yeah. One day, well, yeah.
I've been actually flagship. I've been taking out of decks more than I've been putting it into decks.
Yeah, that was Calypso's follow-up question was like, Shackleton Grid is a seemingly cool card that I keep replacing from my decks. What's yours? Probably when I actually get around to building decks, it's going to be Read, Write, Share. It's a card I'm very excited about, but I suspect is going to not quite pull its weight, but I'll be interested to see.
You and me both.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember we hopped on like mid-spoiler season and cocked through like 4 different decks that we want to try Read, Write, Share in, so it's going to take a little bit of time to get through those, but all right, well, it is we've now gone past our allotted time, so thanks, David. This was a lot of fun. Thanks to everyone who sent in questions. I will put up a new thread in the Measured Response Discord. If you're not in it, there's a link pinned at the top of the thing. There's a link in the description. And if you want to leave a voicemail for us to answer for next week, that would be fantastic. If you just want to leave a written question, obviously those would be great too. And if you want to come on and give us your take next week, that would be also fantastic. We just want to hear from all of y'all. And if not, we'll just shoot the shit for an hour or so. But hopefully y'all have enjoyed this, and yeah, we will talk to you again soon. Any final shout outs or thoughts, Safer?
Pokepia is a pretty good game.
All right. Well, Slay the Spire 2, also a pretty good game. Though
True.
if you didn't like Slay the Spire, it's not any different. But if you're like me and put too many hours in, that's just about what the doctor ordered. So all right, thanks everyone, and we'll